In today's podcast, I will be discussing some surprising discoveries that were brought to light by a 10-year research project. This project describes itself as a forensic recreation of ancient science through a study of ancient art and symbolism. Why are we so interested in ancient Egypt? I think it's because to this day, it still holds secrets. Some of these secrets are so deep and so big, they have power to radically shift our whole understanding of who we are, what we are, who we used to be. By we, I mean humanity. If it were suddenly to come to light that there was a highly sophisticated science known and practiced in the ancient world, and that the focus of this science was the biology of consciousness, and finally, if you were to discover that the science has thus far gone undetected because it was encrypted or hidden in a way that it is immediately visible to those in the know, but entirely invisible for those not initiated into the secrets. The conjunction of all of these events is the starting point of the Magical Egypt series. That this incredibly important message from our past was hidden in the art and in the architecture. And in the culture-wide symbolism that Egypt is famous for. The language of symbolism is the decoder ring that allows these ancient temples to speak and the ancient science to begin transmitting itself. When the boys in the research team started comparing notes and compiling more and more data, it became harder and harder to argue with that there was something in the art that was an expression of a totally unexpected level of scientific sophistication, with a special focus on the parts of the brain, nervous system, and vascular system that are involved in our subjective experience of consciousness. This is a science, mind you, that focuses on the one thing that to this day remains almost a total mystery to modern science: the nature and origin of consciousness and the exact functions of biology involved in consciousness. It eludes us today, but was quite elegantly encrypted into the art and architecture of ancient Egypt. And surprisingly, a lot of the rest of the world. All of these symbols are recognizable from other ancient traditions, like the Tantric and Kundalini schools, whose origins are also shrouded in mystery and go back to deep pre-antiquity. In these traditions, it is understood that a permanent psycho-spiritual transformation can be triggered through the application of this ancient science. This transformative trigger event is known as the risen Kundalini. In other cultures, it is euphemistically known as opening the third eye. This incredibly important message from our past directs us to the mechanism of our brain, our body, and our nervous system, not just to find out some curious facts about our anatomy, but because a fundamental aspect of our destiny as humans involves activating and bringing these mechanisms online. Chance talks about this thing as a meta-orgasm. I love that, right? When you do this process and have the cascading flood of ions, it does something to your magnetic field. The magnetic field grows and grows. This is the reason for the depiction of the halo behind the heads of people who are enlightened in all kinds of ancient art. The halo indicates that you've been through this process and that you have become a finished person. They are now an adult in a metaphysical sense. They are completed, like the pharaoh was shown with the risen snake, the uraeus. You become a metaphysical adult instead of a metaphysical prepubescent. And here is how my friend Dr. Stuart Savatsky explains it. Vibrant well-being, overwhelming ecstasy, effulgently enlightened consciousness, the guiding force of human evolution, pathway to an endless eroticism, the great mother or procreatrix, the deification, regeneration and immortalization of the body, the somatic basis of all religious, moral or spiritual aspirations, the teleological freeing of our soul from flesh via the literal unwinding of the mortal coil into its constituent elements, the lost wisdom of the serpent of Genesis, the fuel of all human genius, the energy of the Dionysian revelry, the spiritual side of DNA concentrated at the base of the spine, Christ's fiery baptism and that of his followers ever since, the seething cobra sheltering Lord Buddha. Such are the ancient and modern claimed cross-cultural manifestations. And again, it's a good story. But here is my point. As I've shown earlier, there is no history. There are only stories, and stories about ancient Egypt change over time, and they change within paradigms. Some stories, like the fact that ancient Egyptians were pre-philosophical, incapable of coherent or systematic thought, and given to expressing itself in rather crude imagery, or that the ancient Egyptians did not know about or care about the brain, which was what I was taught in school, can cause us to make erroneous assumptions, preventing us from even listening to new stories that who knows if they're correct, but I'll tell you what, they are a hell of a lot more meaningful, life-affirming, awe-inspiring, and curiosity stimulating than those other stories. And you know what? What might come out of it if we took it all a little bit more seriously? Brad Clausen is incredibly pragmatic about it. He simply believes that they knew how to access states that provided them with information that allowed them to do amazingly cool things, and that we could access it too. If only we had the eyes to see. The point of ancient Egypt is to direct us to something that we are supposed to be doing. And in doing it, it answers the most important things about us. Like the answer to the question, who am I? What am I? What am I supposed to be doing here? And just like most of this stuff, the answer is not what you think at all. Well, in my opinion anyway.